Welcome to Leadership Conversations, where we showcase NAVFAC's leadership to gain insight on their leadership style and how we apply Get Real, Get Better tools and behaviors into the work we do every day. I'm Carol Casto. I'm the Deputy Chief Management Officer for Strategy and Future Requirements at NAVFAC headquarters, and I lead NAVFAC's Get Real, Get Better institutionalization. Today, I am sitting with NAVFAC's Chief Management Officer, Mr. Paul Pollack, to discuss aligning on standards and goals and standard work. Mr. Pollack, can you share a little bit about who you are and your role at NAVFAC?
Thank you, Carol. Happy to be here. Inside NAVFAC, my title is Chief Management Officer. When I go to the Pentagon, I don't use that term at all because no one really knows what that means, or there's significant variability as to what that means. So when I'm at the Pentagon, I tell people I'm NAVFAC's N1, N5, and N7, and they just nod and say, yeah, okay, I totally get that. So what is that? The N1 is the programs that acquire, staff, and retain our workforce, both civilian and military. The N7 team is the functions that build the readiness and the capability and the skills that allow each of our workforce to fulfill our mission. And our N5 role is to recommend, design, and execute the commander's strategy on his strategic plan, the initiatives that we use to improve our SysCom, how we assess and continually improve our organization and our mission, programs that lay out our requirements for NAVFAC to the Pentagon, and how we plan out and advocate for future resources. We also have in our portfolio the various command services and programs that just simply allow the command to operate on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So those things together is what we do. It's ironic that I describe it that way and without my title, because that's kind of a bit about what standards are. And the terminology that the rest of the Navy uses, the rest of the Department of Defense uses on what is the N1, the N2, the N3, et cetera, that's a lexicon, it's a vocabulary that everyone else instantly knows. And when you introduce different ways of describing your mission or explaining your mission, then there's confusion, there's variability, and you have to start at ground zero before you can have any conversation. So in some ways, the way that I describe myself is an example on where best practices could be applied for standards for all of us in our mission and for the SysCom.
Very good. So people may not know that you've been in NAVFAC for most of your career, not just as a Chief Management Officer, but also in PDC, Ops, FM, and now our business division. Can you describe how your leadership style and values evolved as you moved across different cultures and communities within the command?
Well, let me lay out a little bit more about what you described, because that will hopefully explain or provide context to how I would answer your question. I am an architect by training. I'm licensed in the state of Hawaii. I was in private practice in Hawaii when the Navy called me and said, we would like you to work for NAVFAC. I didn't necessarily take that request seriously at first, but I thought I would work there for a while, and that would help me later on in private practice. Obviously, I didn't leave. I've been working for NAVFAC now for 29 years. And eventually I was at NAVFAC Hawaii as a design architect. And eventually it was asked to set up and manage a GIS program. And at the time, this was before Google Earth, GIS was a new frontier. But I did that for a while. Eventually I became the chief engineer for NAVFAC Hawaii. So all of the design and construction. And from that perspective, I thought that's a dream job for an architect. I'm very happy with what I'm doing. But then the Navy asked more of me. They asked me to do a rotation at NAVFAC Pacific as the deputy ops. I did that for a year. And before going back to NAVFAC Hawaii, another challenge arose that the Navy ran out of 06s to deploy at NAVFAC Pacific. And so I was asked to do the ops job as a civilian for about a year and a half, which was a very, very unique opportunity. And when that was over, they found an 06 and they said, what are we going to do with Paul? Coincidentally, the comptroller position was open. And so they asked me to be the comptroller. I did that job for 5 years before I applied for and was selected for this position here in DC.
So can you describe how your leadership style evolved over those different phases, different, from being a design architect at an Echelon 4 command through your Echelon 3 in organizations that don't really lend themselves to architecture, and then being here, complete fish out of water, 5,000 miles away from where you grew up and all of that.
So fish out of water is good. So the first thing is the first 2 phases of that career, being in design and construction and being in operations, very comfortable. That's my sweet spot. I'm a subject matter expert. And to be perfectly blunt, I felt pretty comfortable that I knew all the answers. Whether I did or not, I was comfortable with that. And so I was still, in those roles, I was still kind of in the mode of a technical expert. And then applying leadership maybe to a certain level, but I wouldn't suggest what NAVFAC and the Navy needed. But when they asked me to be the comptroller, that was a very jarring experience because I'm no longer the technical expert. And as a matter of fact, they asked, my first day was, I believe, the first day of September. And so I'm assuming a job to which I have no technical skills 1 month before the end of the fiscal year. And so what I did was nothing. I watched what everyone was doing, and I looked to see where they needed help, specifically where they needed help from a leadership perspective. There was some barrier that they couldn't resolve themselves. There was a disagreement. There were different opinions from different parts of the organization. And that experience was life-changing for me because I realized that you can achieve more at scale by supporting and leaning on the expertise of your team and supporting them than being necessarily the subject matter expert. And so that was, while that was a very important time in my career, it kind of ratcheted up to the next level coming to DC. In this job, I have, no HR experience, no experience with Palm or all the various things that we do now. And so again, my role has been, how do I understand commander's intent? How do I steer the organization towards the course that the Navy needs of us and that our commander has prescribed? And then how do I remove barriers from the people that people have on my team so they can get the mission accomplished? So some people call that servant leadership. I call it persuasional leadership. It's a quote from General Eisenhower, who said to him, leadership is the art of having someone get something done that you need because they want to do it. And so how do you communicate that vision and that urgency to a team to the point where they're energized and they're set to go? And if I can achieve that, then I'm acting at a scale and at an effect that's much greater than a scenario where I was the technical expert.
Okay. So you mentioned Eisenhower. Who has been the biggest influence on your leadership style and values, and why?
Well, there's a group of people, and the common denominator was they were all successful in their own right, all becoming either flag officers or political leaders in the Department of Defense. They were all disruptive. Every single transition between those different communities we talked about, that wasn't my idea. That was their idea. And so they showed me an opportunity or a future that I didn't see myself. But to answer your question, I'm going to start with the first one as the example, and that's Admiral Kate Gregory. So I worked with her 3 times in my career. The first time I was the chief engineer at NAVFAC Hawaii, and she was the executive officer. And again, I mentioned that job to me was my dream job. I'm running design and construction, doing what I grew up to do. And she made it very clear that I was looking at the world with blinders on. I wasn't appreciative of the totality of NAVFAC's mission and how we support the Navy and the Navy's mission of national defense and global security. And that basically she said, you need to leave your chosen profession and you need to contribute at a level larger. And so she and I discussed that quite a bit, argued about it quite a bit. But at the end of the day, when there was a call and I was asked to go to a different community, to go to a different command, it was really her words and her influence that allowed me to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. So she helped me think bigger, and every work experience that I was assigned to allowed me to have a larger and larger context and understand a larger collective of the goals and the needs of the Navy. And this, I think, goes back to the theme today about aligning the standards and goals and the need for standard work, is that, wherever you sit in the immediacy of your position and what you're working on may have some immediate objectives, but the most important thing is how do they connect to what the Navy needs in our national defense and the challenges that we now face. And she helped me see through that, and each position that I moved to allowed me to see how a standard strategy and a standard alignment created this unity of effort that created a much more lethal and robust Navy than any one person can affect.
Thank you. So as the Chief Management Officer, or as you said, the rest of the Navy calls the N1, the N5, and the N7, you have one of the most strategic views within the NAVFAC organization, especially being this close to the Pentagon. From your perspective, how does the Navy's Get Real, Get Better tools and behaviors help our command succeed? And what leadership behaviors or tools have you embraced to be successful?
To answer that, I've got to start at the top.
Okay.
I've got to start with why is the Navy pushing this mindset? And you can call it GRGB, you can call it things that were named beforehand. This is a decades-old set of philosophies that have evolved over time, coupled with the Navy's benchmarking of what successful organizations, public and private, look like across the world. Why is the Navy so passionate about establishing this mindset? And it's because since World War II, we have been the predominant maritime force on the globe, both in terms of size and technology. And that edge has evaporated and in some areas completely diminished. And so when, for the Navy to execute the objectives of the President and the security of the nation, every action must be taken to achieve the most consequential outcomes. So the purpose of GRGB is to assure that we are aligning to those things that absolutely have the maximum effect in the defense of our country and whatever potential scenario may come our way. So how do we then take that on as an organization? So I'll admit I brought some props with me, and I thought something like this would be discussed. And so the first thing that I would say is our strategic plan. Mm-hmm. So my mission is to support the commander in both the development of this plan and the implementation of it. The mission will include the development of the next iteration for Admiral Vanderlei's relief. You have been a part of that mission. We worked this together, and so all of those most consequential outcomes that I cited they were all incorporated into the planning and development of this document. There's a portion here that talks about the strategic framework, and there's 4 major themes that are laid out here. These 4 major themes were not developed in isolation. They were part of understanding what the Navy needs of NAVFAC, what the Marine Corps needs of NAVFAC. And so this by itself becomes, well, this initially is the North Star, is the guide that sets the agenda for all the initiatives, the energy, the governance, the measuring performance and output that we apply. And so there's a corresponding version of this document. That's the performance report.
Yes.
These are the kind of the bookends of our mission in terms of setting the strategy and then measuring our performance to the Navy. So all of these 2 products utilize the GRGB tools of understanding your problem statement, developing root cause on comes from knowing your goals, assessing performance, and then using a continuous improvements process to achieve performance at the goal level prescribed by the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So for those of us that get to work with you on a regular basis, we know that you're passionate about measuring your program and continuously improving. On a smaller scale, how do you approach with your staff understanding your mission, setting a goal, and measuring performance to improve?
Well, in digestible chunks. And what I mean by that is I'm not expecting everyone to instantly absorb everything that OPNAV wants us to know about Get Real, Get Better and all the various tools. But we need to start with knowing what we seek. And there is a tool within Get Real, Get Better called TAG, Target Actual Gap. And so to your question, I have all of the people on my team have some type of programmatic responsibility in that spans the systems command. And if you don't measure the performance of that program, you can't assess and understand what you need to do to be successful. And if you don't know the goals for that program, you can't assess even if you do measure. And so that's where TAG becomes very, very important. And it's a straightforward concept that to me is a good starting point or entry point into aligning to goals. What is your target? What is the desired end state that is a success for your initiative, your action, your work, or your program? And then once you know the target, how do you use data to measure the actual condition? And then you can then measure the gap, and that gap becomes the starting point for understanding root cause and perhaps changing policies, changing procedures, to changing common processes in order to improve that performance. And that's where standard work comes into this, that you have to have a baseline of what process is being used across the enterprise. And if you can understand where those processes could be improved, if there is standard work, then you can elevate the performance and affect the outcome across the entire Navy, not just one individual location. If there is no standard work, if everyone has different processes, you may have one command, one FAC, one location, 2 locations that has some process improvement, but the ability to share that knowledge and for it to resonate with another group will be compromised because they don't have a standard lexicon, a standard vocabulary. And that's one of the critical lessons learned that the Navy has understood as they've benchmarked around the organization. Keep in mind that as NAVFAC, our supported commander, our customer base is afloat. They're moving all around. And so if every time they come ashore and if they find a different approach and they have to deal in a different way with their local NAVFAC command, that creates confusion, it creates anxiety, it's sub-optimized. When any one of us travel around the world and we want something to eat, you can go to McDonald's at any country and you know exactly what you're going to get. If you need new shoes, and that happened to me last year in Canada. I was in Canada, I needed new shoes. I went to a Nike store, I knew exactly what I was going to get because there's a common model. These best practice organizations have a common model and have a common output that everyone can then rely on and instinctively understand.
So I'm going to go back to the target because I think that's really important, at least for the programs that I manage for you. Establishing the target has been very challenging. Do you have recommendations on how to set that target?
There's two basic questions that I would ask or approaches I would take. First off, is the target already set? Mm-hmm. And for example, you see this a lot with programs that have a common denominator in every single command across the Navy. And there may already be a target prescribed by higher command. That could be the Pentagon, it could be NAVFAC headquarters for the field commands, it could be the commander, Admiral Vanderlei in this case. And so if there is already a target set, my recommendation in terms of inculcating this into your daily routine is run with commander's intent, run with what is already established. And once you have that, once you know that target as it's prescribed, then it's about assessing the data and knowing whether your performance meets that target or not. So that's the first approach. If there are programs where the target is not clear, and it's a different discussion. So the first thing that I would do if in the case of a program that it's not clear from the Pentagon, does our commander have a prescribed target? If that's not the case, and you need to have some more critical thinking, I would also suggest this is probably not a problem or an issue that is unique to us, and I would want to look around and benchmark other Navy commands that have either the same type of program or a similar program where we can learn from their targets and we can establish a starting point from there. If that's not available, and we have some examples currently where none of that was available, then it's starting to use some of the problem-solving tools. In this case, the one that we're using now is the problem-solving canvas specific to the North Star, the goals, and the baseline elements, where you define your aspirational desired end state. What do you want from this program? What does the Navy need from this program? And how do you organize that need into a measurable time-bound expectation? And then from there, you can create goals. And once you have goals, you can measure. And then, so you're coming up with a hypothesis. You're using the scientific method. And so you've used the canvas to develop this hypothesis, and then you test the hypothesis with leadership. And they roger up, you're good, that's your target. But they might give you input to think differently, and then you go back and refine. And that model has worked very, very well, especially in team dynamics. We have a project right now where we're looking at rethinking how we deliver HR services worldwide. And there's a team of people that are participating at all echelons. And so they all come with a different starting point about what they think success looks like. And there's not a lot of clarity from the top on what the target should be defined as. And so they're using this Canvas tool to help them, again, it's their common vocabulary, it helps them think through together so that they've now come to a single hypothesis that's actually quite good, and they're making great progress.
Mm-hmm. So to continue on that theme, just because we both know about the example, when they first showed you a canvas, it said that we needed more money. And I think it was Admiral Lesher that said, if your first instinct is to say, if I just had more money, I could get this done, how do you then revise your goals to hit on targets that are within, that you're capable of doing on your own, or that you can elevate in a manner that doesn't require additional money?
Well, that then gets to what the root cause really is. And so too often, it's very, very easy, it's human, to come to a problem where you already think you know the answer. Mm-hmm. And so there's some vulnerability and that is required to think back and don't look at it initially from a resource perspective. Understand the root process on how things are happening and what could be better from a process perspective. And if typically people that do that will find opportunities for improvement. And if you do all that work, once you get it to the point where you have developed the theoretically most efficient process, and you still have an output problem, but your given input is as lean and as efficient as it can be, then it's reasonable to talk about, do you add more input? And that could be resources, that could be money, that could be people. But yes, GRGB, and Admiral Lesher being one of the pioneers in that area, has made it very clear, if you start with resourcing, you will intellectually skip all of the process learning and potential to extract the most output than if you're looking at it from a root cause perspective.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So can you describe a time where your organization's standards weren't communicated or executed well, or both? Do you have advice for supervisors and leaders that want to have a better aligned team but don't know how to get started?
I can think of many examples, but it would require a lot of background explanation, or maybe it's just not appropriate for me to say these examples in public. But what I would say, the common denominator in areas where we did not achieve our desired goal was issues where there was a lack of alignment and lack of unity of effort. Mm. We didn't understand the problem statement the same way. This plan has 11 initiatives in it. Some of them are complete. I believe as of this writing, there's 3 that are complete. I can tell you with certainty that those 3 had very clear problem statements with measurable goals and timelines. The ones that aren't complete, we're learning as we explore the problem statement and there's work being done, that perhaps the problem statement wasn't as clearly understood as we thought, or because it wasn't tied with measurable goals and timelines, it was a problem that was far too large to solve in a reasonable time frame. Perhaps it's an eternal problem that we constantly seek. And so when there isn't this unity of effort, usually it's understanding the problem statement or developing or establishing a problem that is outside the scale, a reasonable scale of solving with a timeline. And so you go back and you rethink and you reframe what you want to achieve. You make it measurable, you make it specific, you lay out a timeline, and then once you achieve that, then you can ratchet it up to the next level on, okay, let's find out, or let's think about how we can take it to the next level. And so eventually you perform this phased approach, and you'll continually approach your intended goal space.
So that's continuous improvement, right? I mean, that's progress, not perfection. So the longer you try to achieve perfection, the more time you lose when you could have just gotten started, right? And you could have just made an incremental improvement.
Very well said.
Through a digestible chunk.
Through digestible chunks, yes.
Okay. Can you share an experience where you've seen align on standards and goals done well? What are some key behaviors or principles required to be successful?
Well, I cited 3 initiatives here that were completed, and the common denominator was unity of effort, The problem statement was clearly defined. It was coordinated with the commander. Preparation for this strategic plan. NAVFAC spent a few years researching and refining and rewriting our missions, functions, and tasks, which is the instruction that the Chief of Naval Operation gives us as to what our unique mission in the defense of our country is. And it focused intentionally on those requirements that were prescribed by law and regulation. It wasn't necessarily what people wanted us to do. It was, what does the Navy expect and need of us? This is the core definition of aligning the standards and goals versus simply reaching out and doing work whenever and wherever work can be done. And by doing that, it honed our understanding of our mission into what we now know as our 10 capabilities. It's listed in our strategic plan. And these 10 capabilities aren't necessarily in line with the work we've done in the past, but it's what the Navy needs of us. It is truly the most consequential outcomes that we provide for the defense of our country. And so this construct that was derived from the MFT has created a whole infrastructure of governance and alignment and risk determination that allows us to focus on truly the most consequential things. So from this list comes the way that we understand requirements and budget requirements, how we allocate money, and how we manage and assess risk, how we measure ourselves. So for example, the performance report is not organized by business lines. It's organized by the tier 1 outcomes, the most consequential outcomes of these 10 capabilities. And so this is continued to evolve and hone the way that we organize and we manage. Most recently, I think many people may know that there was a reorganization within NAVFAC where the former asset management business line, those functions were retained but were realigned into design and construction and maintenance and facility operations. And that's because those functions are core capabilities. And so that's an area, and everyone still had, in the legacy organization, still had a pivotal role to play in the NAVFAC mission, but now their role is organizationally aligned to what matters most.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pollack, for your time and insights today. Thank you to everybody who took the time to listen and learn about Mr. Pollack's leadership style and how he aligns on standards and goals to continuously improve. I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Signing off for now.